Well, hey, everybody. I am thrilled to have you back in part of this conversation we're trying to host about reopening church, and so blessed to have Dr. Ronnie Floyd with us today. Dr. Floyd serves as is it chairman or CEO? I'm going to get the title wrong, of the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee. Is that right, Ronnie? Did I get the title right?
Yeah. I am the president and CEO of the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee.
That's awesome. And that's a fairly new job, right?
It's new for me, yes, but the executive committee's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah, but this is your first year, right?
That's correct. I really, in May of last year, on May the 20th, I began this calling formally. And then Gina and I, even though I commuted for a while from Arkansas, we moved the last week of June in 2019.
Well, there's so many things to talk about. I'd love to hear how it was to take that course in seminary on guiding a denomination through a pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. I may have to help teach that course, but hopefully not for another generation that goes through this one day.
It's going to change education, I think. But love to start with just. I know we want to get to talking about how do denominations speak into this. What are you hearing from churches? Because you're hearing from all sizes and shapes. But I'd like to go back to the beginning of this job because people may not realize that you left a pretty awesome job pastoring a church in Arkansas that I've been to many times over the years, and God used you to build a mighty thing there at, it's Cross Church now, but you just went through succession right before all this. What's it like to watch the church that God built through you go through a time where they got a brand new leader who you happen to know really well in a really unprecedented time? Is it hard to stay out of that, or what's that like?
I was there 32 years and 7 months, William, and originally from Texas, but the Lord led me there. And Northwest Arkansas is the home of Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Tyson Foods, and the University of Arkansas, along with about 1,500 companies that service the Walmart and all that they do. I miss being a pastor, and I miss obviously the opportunity to be with people on a daily basis and cheering them on for their life and all. But about a year and probably 4 or 5 months ago, I received a call about doing this. And while I would have never dreamt that I would be in this phase of life and readjusting and resetting my entire life and career and future, but God, we believe, called us here to do this. It's interesting when you look back at Cross Church. Nick has been there almost a year when you and I are taping this podcast. And so with that, the church is doing really well, and they're excelling in pretty well every way. And that's because he was there 10 years. He grew up in the church, but he was there 10 years on the staff team. And as I remarked to you earlier, before we began this podcast today, the most important thing in this to me is not just the leader, but the DNA of that leader and that church being the same. And that's really difficult when a guy comes in from the outside. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult. But this time, the Lord deemed it to happen in this manner for Cross Church, which is a very special church, multi-campus, runs a lot of thousands on the weekend, and grateful to God for every day I had there.
Well, I've been there to speak for Nick since he took over at the Businessman's event that you all have gotten so much notoriety for, and it seems to be going well. I remember we were sitting together in a hotel lobby in New York right when these conversations started. So when we were first sitting there, I didn't ask you this, but you had to have in your mind, well, here's what the job would look like. What's been what you thought it would look like, and given the COVID situation, what it actually looks like now?
Right. Yeah, well, for those who do not understand what we do, let me just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
I think that is really important in relationship to understanding the context of the conversation. The Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee really has the responsibility, the staff of that, to serve ad interim when the convention is not in session, in between conventions. Well, we only meet once a year, 2 days a year in a convention setting, even though for the first time in 75 years, I had to lead us in canceling the SBC that's supposed to come up in June due to the pandemic. So therefore, but our role is to act on behalf of the Southern Baptist Convention about matters that we need to relating to executive function, fiduciary matters, as well as fiscal matters. And so we do those things. And so we're basically the day-to-day president and CEO of the Southern Baptist Convention about its business matters, the ongoing nature of the church, all the way to and fro from local churches to associations to state conventions to the national level. We have 47,500 churches. We categorize it as 52,000 congregations across the United States. We have 41 state conventions that cover all 50 states. And we have 12 national entities, including us, that formulated the national level. And so together, you know, we partner with our churches to take the gospel of Jesus Christ to every person in the world, and ultimately to get the gospel out to as many people as possible.
Well, when you took the job, I mean, the convention, like any denomination or convention, has its own issues. I mean, we're on this side of heaven, so nothing's perfect. But surely you took the job thinking, I'm going to have to deal with X, Y, and Z. Oh, yeah. And now pandemic hits and it's not the same X, Y, and Z. What shifted for you that you had to say, okay, I got to figure out how to deal with this now?
Yeah, well, great question, because when I came in, the Southern Baptist Convention was in a very difficult season. As you know, living in Houston, the Southern Baptist Convention was on the front page of the Houston Chronicle, which literally ran everywhere at that time regarding the challenging issue of sexual abuse. And so we were in that, and we were trying to lead the convention. I came in and moved us to doing some things and taking action that would be long-term to help us address this issue most effectively. And so we did that through creating a constitutional amendment, 2 amendments to the Constitution, in fact, which, I mean, you just imagine, we've been around since 1845, William, as a denomination. So, you know, this year is our 175th anniversary. In fact, this past week, the International Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, which is basically the largest of its kind around the world, fully funded, full-time missionaries, they celebrated 175-year anniversary because they began formally as a foreign mission board on May the 10th of 1845, just 2 days after the convention inaugurated on May the 8th, 1845. And so them, along with the North American Mission Board, have been around all that time. And so with this, you look at the challenges of what we went through in 2019 convention, along with a lot of, you know, struggles, internal struggles, really just signs of being unhealthy, some of it, and then dealing with all that, navigating through all those seasons in my first few months, and then I brought forward to the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee a vision called Vision 2025. I did that in our February meeting with this group, which has 86 members, William. It's like, some call it the House of Representatives, you know, the Southern Baptist Convention. That scares me, but regardless, they come from every state in the country. It's the largest group of Baptists to get together outside of the convention itself. to make decisions relating to matters about the Southern Baptist Convention. And so we met in February, and that vision was enthusiastically endorsed. And within just 3 or 4 weeks, we were gathering via Zoom,
Wow.
86 members from all across the nation. And we began, for lack of a better term, we began the domino effect of what it would take place to cancel a Southern Baptist Convention meeting. Now, for your listeners today, and most Southern Baptists don't even know this, and we have some 15 million of us, they say, but in this, we've only canceled the Southern Baptist Convention 4 times since 1845. It was canceled in 1863 in the middle of Civil War. It was canceled in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. It was canceled in 1945 at the end of World War II. And now, one of my first official actions had to begin to move us forward to following the Constitution relating to canceling of the SBC, which involves the group that I lead, along with the SBC officers, along with all of the entity heads of the Southern Baptist Convention, and because that's what the Constitution says that we must do. And so with that, William, it's been a journey. And because we've been in a stay-at-home order here in the state of Tennessee at the time of this conversation, you and me, for at least 8 weeks. And some of it has just opened up some. And so even though I've had to come to the office a little bit, and I was able to do that because I'm deemed as treasurer of the Southern Baptist Convention as one of my roles, because we're all about the financial matters as well, then all of this, has been really challenging. This week, for the first time, we have just a few staff members in the office. And of course, we're doing what needs to be done with less than 10 and trying to obey everything we've been asked to do, and we will do that. And so it's been an extraordinary challenge to be in a new place, new home, new city, new job, a totally different job, even though it's ministry and Great Commission oriented in every way. The only thing I don't have new is my wife. And, we've been married going to be 44 years. And so thank God that is the same. And she and I both would agree with that.
Well, I can only imagine, I'm guessing when you were pastoring Cross Church, you didn't have any committees of 86 members.
No.
So, being a Presbyterian, we actually, at our church that I pastored, last one I pastored, was around forever. Sam Houston went to our church in Houston. We had the Committee on Committees, which sounds like the most arcane Byzantine.
We have one of those also at the SBC.
Exactly. So many of the people that I get to talk to have planted their church in the last 15, 20 years. And so they've got a lot more flexibility and agility and, we'll just do it this way or we'll do it that way. But I'm guessing you've had to, so there are probably not a whole lot of provisions for when do you cancel the convention? Do you elect a new president? Do you not? How would you advise, the normal pastor that's listening to this? People forget the normal church is 120 people on a Sunday, and that's probably 4 or 5 families make up most of that. And there's a way we've always done things, and now we're in a time that we've never done before. So what have you learned about having to make it up as you go or work around literally 175-year-old rules to address an unforeseen reality? Does that make sense? What are you learning about that? That's got to be fascinating.
Well, I tell you what, it's been extraordinary, and I felt like I was pretty adaptable, and I am. But at the same time, I'm also modified traditional in relationship to, I really enjoy certain things about, for example, in this situation, Southern Baptist Convention life, and going and doing certain things that we get to do together as being a part of our churches. And to know that was going to be changed due to, of all things, a global pandemic. something I would have never imagined us face. I don't know if I was just like in La La Land and was daydreaming sometime when I was a grade schooler and I was learning about various things. But it became very apparent this was highly serious, and it became very concerning of everything that we do. Now, I've been in so many Zoom calls. I'm almost zoomed out. I've conducted no telling how many, plus have been asked to be a participant or to help a group navigate through various things, and all of them have been extremely insightful. I believe in the power of asking questions, and there is great authority in doing that. It humbles you to be willing to ask, and it humbles you to be willing to learn. And we're at a time now, it doesn't matter what your position is, what your church size is, what your ethnicity is, what your generation is. I mean, literally, this is affecting all of us. And so to be able to take away what I have already learned is excessive. But I'm telling you, we've been in conversations with churches. I have talked, and this is not exaggeration, to a few thousand pastors via Zoom call, because I've been on so many calls, and many of them I've conducted myself, because I want to hear. We had this conversation right on. I learned this really not just through this, but I learned it earlier being a pastor. When a crisis happens, one of the key matters is communication. And so we have prioritized that at every level. And we have tried to stay in contact with major leaders and pastors all across America and even beyond. We've been in conversations with others, obviously, with all of our entity leaders and our state convention leaders and all those people, some associational leaders. And so, but the key is what's happening in that local church. To me, it's all about the local church. It's not about feeding a denomination or a structure. It's about the church. Jesus has his footprint all across America and the world, and it's called his church. Mm-hmm. And if we will step in his footprint, that he is anointed and he is appointed to take the gospel to the world and serve them and help them navigate through challenges, even the challenges of a global pandemic. I mean, this is an extraordinary time. And so what happens is there's a need for communication, but there's got to be a need for a reset as well, which is a whole different discussion. But we're going to, in the process of trying to define that ground in order to even have a reset for our future.
So let's put brass tacks around it then. I'm pastoring First Baptist Church in Lenore, North Carolina, my hometown. My granddaddy taught Sunday school there forever. And you get a couple new converts. We can't meet yet, but they want to get baptized. But we always baptize at the church. We've never done it another way. If you're the pastor of that church, how are you going to guide the deacons to the answer that may be something they've never done it that way before? Does that make sense? Like what advice would you give pastors who are facing those kind of conversations?
Well, let's just think about that simple conversation you just had about the baptismal matter. You know, what I would encourage would probably be, because they're not used to seeing that in more of a private setting, then I would conduct that baptism where it could be seen electronically to the entire church. Even if I had to video that and then put it into my live stream. And I would just let them know this is coming in order to, just as we've had to change other matters, and we're going to have to continue to change matters, this has got to be addressed. These people don't want to wait. Why would we want them to wait? They're following Jesus. They've given their lives to Christ. They're being discipled and vibrantly trying to go forward. This is a major step. The church does not cancel. The church does not stop due to a global pandemic. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Therefore, we go forward even though we're scattered and we're not gathered. And so the church has had to learn a lot of things. And I'll just say this, and again, listen, the convention of churches we have, by no means is there any we're not even close to what perfection would even appear to look like. So I know that. But I do want to say this, because I want to encourage you and your listeners. I'm just going to take the snapshot of the thousands and thousands and thousands of churches we have. I have been highly, highly, highly impressed with how crisis has created innovation in those churches.
Yes, I would agree.
We have seen literally what some churches would have had to go through 5 and 10 years to do. It happened in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we need to give God praise for that. Because on the backside of this, a lot of the things that we're doing now are going to become new pathways for the future.
That's right.
The way we receive the offering, the way that we maybe even perhaps do small group ministry at times via Zoom or whatever the mode of technology might be. Also to having that online audience stay with you, even though many of them will never be in your church one day. This is not a time to cancel that when you go back and you worry about whether or not they're going to come to your church. They'll be at your church eventually, especially when they have a crisis. And but God's given you those people as a pastor, so you have to seize that moment, and you've got to continue forward. And I tell you what, I think that's going to be one of the most, perhaps, William, one of the most redefining conversations for churches in the future would be, how do we deal with the online audience? Now, I know some churches have had that, but they hadn't had it by the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of the 300,000 plus churches in America.
It's the new front porch of the church.
Absolutely. And more than ever before, who has survived this the best? Who has reached the most people long term? Well, ultimately, it's going to be probably those who are already set up to do it. But also it's going to be those who have been at least trying to do it. I mean, we've heard conversations of a guy that, he might preach, to 200 people on a Sunday, but now he's preaching to 1,000, and they're all listening at the same time. I mean, I'm not talking about somebody coming on later and later and later, and all of a sudden all that builds up to be something, but real live users. And so, this guy, while he is concerned with where his church is today, he also sees if he has any light of evangelistic zeal, God has given me an incredible opportunity.
Well, and I think it's going to cause churches, as you say, this will be an accelerator. There's been a lot of churches. I mean, you've always been on the front edge. People would say to me, William, how do you get in touch with Dr. Floyd? He's so busy. I said, oh, that's easy. You text him at 4 a.m. Well, I don't get up at 4 a.m. Well, he does, and I do, and I can catch him then, and he'll text me right back.
That's one of those early morning conversations, haven't we? Yeah, you recently had Al Mohler on. When Al and I were on a study group for a year together, I was chairman of what was called the Great Commission Resurgence, and Al was one of the 21 members on that group. And it was really funny because I'd be getting up when he was going to bed. He's one of those late night guys, and our emails would pass stream, And so I don't know if he's still doing that, but he used to do it.
That's funny.
Years ago.
Well, then there's a good Baptist up 24/7 that way.
That's right, no doubt about it. 70%, yeah, on Al Mohler and Ronnie Floyd together. Yeah.
Hey, let's shift gears a minute. You've talked to thousands of pastors. I have too. And I think, I'm here in Texas, and Texas, it's larger than France. It's pretty hard to have an ordinance for the entire state. I mean, even in Tennessee, you've got churches in Nashville or in Georgia where they've opened up early. Dr. Stanley's not going to have an easy time getting a church together in the middle of Atlanta. But the reality for most of the churches in Texas is it's First Baptist Church of Big Spring or First Baptist Church of New London, and they don't even know what a COVID is. So and that's an exaggeration, but what are you hearing out there about churches that are in moderately to low affected areas and how they're opening up, and what lessons can other churches that are going to open a little later learn from folks who are opening up already right now?
Well, tremendous question. I would say this, that we obviously are beginning to see some of these open up. But remember, it's all about that governor. He's the one that starts that typically. Some of our churches have gone on and met during this time, maybe through drive-in church. They've been really creative about a lot of different ways doing that. But I think it doesn't matter what setting we're learning in that. We're learning that they're all not going to come back Sunday one, so get used to it. And I think that what we're going to see is it doesn't matter how the staging goes. The thing I've told pastors, and I've really zeroed in on this the last 3 weeks, because I feel like I have been in enough conversations. I now, am getting it a little bit more. Is that I think there are going to be cultural indicators that are going to serve as a release for people to turn and go back to church. Mm-hmm. The quicker they are at restaurants eating, the quicker they return to work, the quicker that they do those kinds of things, the basics of life, living life, the quicker they're going to feel comfortable about going to church. And the smaller churches, the smaller membership churches will be less affected by that than the larger membership churches. I think the problem is going to be in the larger membership churches and churches in metro areas, some. That doesn't mean it's going to be easier. It's just going to be easier in the sense that there's not as many people, William. And the threat has not been as great because we know that the threat of COVID-19 has apparently in most settings come among masses of people gathered in one setting. And so, and this goes back even to our decision about canceling the Southern Baptist Convention. When we canceled the convention, I would have liked to have waited, maybe a couple more weeks personally. But I really felt like it was inevitable. And I felt like there's, it costs a lot of money to do those. You're bringing in people from all over America. There's just a lot of stuff going on in the world, not just America, but across the world. And so we finally made that decision. And there's no question it was the right decision. And because we were meeting early in June in Orlando this year. And that was a good question. Now, would we have had people? Yeah, we would have had people. There's no doubt about it. But how many people would you have? I saw illustrations going back to the church, for example. I saw illustrations in some of our larger churches in metro areas that have already started meeting. And with that, you can see in worship services that normally have thousands inside of one building, when you do social distancing, it doesn't look like a crowd. Yeah. And it affects music, it affects worship. I was on a conversation the other day with if I named every one of these pastors, you would know them because some of them were non-SBC pastors along with other pastors and large masses of people. And I also had some of my lights came on after that conversation too. A lot of these pastors, as well as pastors in our own convention, now understand we've got to be sure it's worth it to go back, or let's just keep doing the same.
Yep.
Worth it doesn't mean it's not worth the soul. It doesn't worth the preaching of the word and gathering the church. Hey, listen, pastors are dying to go back to church. And yep. I really do think that we could see the return to the church that we have yearned for in America over the last decade to 2 decades, once this is over, whatever over means. Yeah. And I don't know when that is, and nor does anyone else, but I really do believe that potential is there.
Well, I'd even carry it back farther than maybe 70 years ago, post-World War II, which is not a new thought. A lot of people are saying that kind of thing. You hear people, I've got friends in newer churches that have been very good at latching on to new trends and saying, well, internet church is the way it's going to go. Don't build me, build it. I'm not buying it. you can't undo thousands of years of human behavior, nor can you undo the way God wired us. He said, it's not good for you to be left alone. You know, like that's the first thing he said was bad. And I do think, let me try a theory on you. I'll catch you cold, catch your reaction. I think that one of the things that's going to happen, at least in the next 2 or 3 years in American church, is the local church is going to become more localized than ever. I'm a big fan of the big church, the regional sort of patriarchal see, but I think the little Methodist church about 3 blocks down from me is going to have record attendance over the next 3 or 4 years because people know their neighbors, they go around the neighbors, they go in smaller, it'd be easier to onboard, like you say. And I think, I may be wrong about this, but I think if I were advising, what would you call it, the county seat church pastor, the First Baptist church, wherever, learn your county like never before. Because now everybody's figured out how to Netflix Craig Rochelle or Nick Floyd or Steve Furtick or whoever they know how to watch great preaching. Now it's going to be about knowing your local situation and what God's speaking to your very particular community. Now, am I crazy on that? Am I overreaching? I mean, what's your reaction to that?
No, I do believe that's so. And I think that you can see that even in a lot of multi-site churches that have tested the multi-site movement, which is now, how long has that been going on? Since the year 2000, probably?
Something like that, yeah.
In that nature. So we have 20 years of experience in that. And I think you're seeing now even churches many of them are becoming more multi-site in some ways because they know the power of the local community. People going to church where they live. And that goes back to some of those churches that I pastored in my early years that, ran 100 people, that ran 150 people or 300 people. And they were in those different sizes of towns from 700 people to 3,000 people, to 20,000 people. And so it doesn't matter what level it is, it's all going to be that. In fact, I want to take that one step further because I think you're right. I think the key is that local church, county seat church pastor, that he focuses on reaching his town, but he's also has to have a global focus at the same time. He's got to be global in his view, both local and global. And if he can be global as well as local, he can take that church that 10 years ago would have thought they could go this far. But I'm telling you, with a global view, they can go this far, way beyond what they ever imagined. And once they start seeing what God is doing around the world in certain places, along with you take your state, Texas. I mean, what a great state to invest in for the gospel.
It's the best country on earth.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, I've never gotten over being born there, and living there my first 20 whatever years, almost 30 years. And so I think that the key is, William, that the guy's got to focus on that, but he's also got to focus on I need to reach my state for Christ. Pastors have got to be alert in how to touch their state. And here's the great news: with technology, with all of the mission endeavors that are available to people today, whatever their denomination may be, or their network of churches that they affiliate with. I mean, listen, they're able to come together with other churches and do something big in a state like Texas or Tennessee, or you name your state. And the country needs the gospel, and the world. I mean, you have 7.7 billion people. The needs are endless. And so I think that guy in that county seat church, or you name it, you go down to the smallest of the smallest. He's going to learn now there's a big old world outside of what I've been preaching in my worship room.
That's good.
I think it's going to take the vision of pastors up and to see their community in ways they've never seen it also.
That's awesome. Hey, as we think about the younger people that are coming out into ministry now, I'm actually old enough that I can say that now, the young people. But, what do you know now you wish you could grab some new seminary grad and say, hey, let me save you some stupid texts, given what we're facing right now and the world that's in front of these young men and women that are coming out? wanting to serve Jesus, what advice do you wish you could pass on to the Ronnie Floyd that's headed to Arkansas for his first day at First Baptist Church?
Yeah, well, beside the matters relating to a personal devotional life that needs to be strong and dominant, besides matters of preaching, that should be the overflow of that devotional life with your fire, but also with your scholarship that you develop through hours and hours of study each week. Beside those two givens, I would say, because any preacher worth his salt is going to do those well, or he better, because if you can't do the pulpit well, you can forget about the rest of it. And because it's a thermostat, that and the worship is your thermostat in the church. But if he can do those, I would say to him, beyond concentrating on those, I would really do my best to learn how to take the Bible and let it live through acts of compassion, acts of mercy, acts of justice, doing the right things that you know will honor God in every way, to be a part of a community and establishing a church in your church that is full of love. Love, love, love. Jesus said, love one another. Unity is one of the greatest representations of your oneness with Christ, and obviously is the overflow of what God is doing in the fellowship of your believers. And pastors make a sore mistake dying on hills that are not worth dying on. Pastors don't typically lose their churches based off of their theology. I'm sure some do, but typically not. They don't lose it even in relationship to maybe their personal choice of music or worship. But they usually lose it on the basis of the hills that they say, thus this is my way. Some guys make that about all kind of matters, from music to dress to, I'm going to determine everything in this church. Well, good luck, dude. You're going to think you are, but you're not, and you never are, nor should you ever do that. The gentle leader can turn away a lot of wrath. The man who understands how to navigate without acting like he has all the answers, and to build leaders. I would tell guys, build leaders, 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 leaders. Develop leaders, send leaders, and do everything you can to do that with your people. You go back at Cross Church, and I was going to reflect on that for a moment. Well, we gave our lives to building and developing leaders, sending out leaders, not simply in the church. I'm talking about sending them out all across the world in business, equipping them how to live the Christian life, helping them become sharp in areas of even business, as well as their personal devotional life, as well as matters of how to live out what it means to have faith in the workplace. But this whole element, to me, it's all about that. And William, before I left Cross Church, I learned this the last week of my life there, really the last 4 or 5 weeks of my life there. But it really became just boomed in big time television my last week. Ministry comes down to 2 basic things: relationships and moments.
Wow.
I say goodbye to thousands and thousands of people. And I want to tell you what they recalled: relationships. And they have a relationship with their pastor, whether he knows their name or not, because he's preaching the word of the living God. And the moments, they recount the moments. Not all that stuff you think they're into, but the moments, the moment that you were preaching a sermon you were bored with, but God used that moment in their life. That experience of being in the middle of a crisis, and that pastor calls, shows up at the hospital. showed up at the funeral home, did a memorial service. They didn't even know that you'd be willing to entertain doing that.
Wow.
Performing a wedding on Friday or Saturday night. I mean, listen, it comes down to those things.
You're preaching to me. I know when I was pastoring, I was guilty all the time of despising the small things.
Yeah, boy.
You know, thinking, well, this isn't one of those big. Actually, it might be a bigger deal than you think.
Oh yeah, yeah. Paul, pastors can really, they can really take their leadership and their influence just with a phone call.
Mm.
With a text message, with an email, with a handshake. Once we get through this, if you ever return to handshaking,
I am.
Whatever it is, I mean, I'm just telling you, when you're in that lobby of your church every Sunday, and some pastors who might be listening today, you may detest that time. You say, well, I preach all this time, and hey, brother, I preached and preached and preached and preached. You are not talking to the guy you want to hear sympathy from. You need to discipline yourself to get in that lobby and be with people.
That's good.
And you be one of the last ones to leave that lobby. Don't ever forget it.
That's
you can
good.
lead people to Christ out there. You can pray for people. You can laugh with people. You can have fun with people. And I'm telling you, it can be a moment. Those are the kind of moments people remember.
Relationships, moments.
Absolutely.
That's big. Ronnie, I appreciate your friendship so much, and knowing you all the years, and taking time out when you've got more than a few things to deal with today. I thank you so much for taking time for our little corner of the part of the church we're trying to work on, and we're praying for you, and know you're right there on the front lines. If we can ever help you, please let me know.
Well, thank you very much, William. We all have to be very busy right now about how to help our churches and our people. And we've got to be really busy together. We've got to get the gospel to the world. I close with this, William. I've learned this so far in the global pandemic. We need God more than ever before. We need each other more than ever before. And we need to finish the task of taking the gospel to the world more than ever before.
Wow. Well, there's a hunger for it. And appreciate you and your time and words.
Thank you.
Take care.